Hi there, I'm Mrs. Irvin, and I'm here standing next to the mill pond in Durham, New Hampshire, and you might see off in the distance is the dam which holds back the water and forms this pond. I'm here to talk about an issue that's been talked about recently in this town of Durham. And the town government and the people in Durham are expressing their views on what should happen because they've been alerted that the dam may need some attention or some repairs. So people have come up with lots of letters. They've been writing to the town government. They've been talking to their neighbors. And there probably is many sides, but the two main sides that how we're gonna think about it, just to simplify things, is one group. Many people feel that they want the dam to stay there or to be repaired, and for the pond to stay as it is, as well as the water there's about a mile of water that's impounded or blocked by the dam, so it's formed kind of a little bit, it's a pond that the pond kind of stretches back for about a mile. Another group would like the town to take the dam down, and they want the Oyster River, which is flowing right here, they want it to just be a river again, the river was stopped about 400 years ago when they started to put up a dam, and some of those dams washed out, but they've continued over these 400 years to put up new dams so that this pond stays here for the town of Durham. So what I'd like you to do is to listen to these people and see if you can tell which side the people are on. And before you watch the video, you might want to talk about it with your parents a little bit. Why do you think some people want the dam to stay there and to have the pond stay as it is? And why do you think some people might want to take the dam down? So think about that, talk about it with your family. You're going to learn a lot. Watch a little bit of the video and take breaks when you need to. Go play outside and come back. I'm interested in what you learn. So I'm also incredibly appreciative to these people that took time out of their day, out of their work day, out of their time with their family to sit down or come gather here next to the pond and talk about this. And I was so impressed with how respectful they were. And a lot of them said a lot more than is going to be in this video, but I had to cut it back, so you won't hear everything from everybody. You won't hear all that they said, but I made it so that you can kind of get an idea of the two different sides. So when you've got time, keep going with this video and listen to what people have to say, and let me know what you think, and see if you can see why people feel that they want to keep the dam and why people feel that they want to take down the dam. So I'm so glad you're listening, and special thanks to all the people who spoke on this video.
My name is Matt Carpenter. I'm a fish conservation biologist with New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, Inland Fisheries. And I've been working for about 20 years now, actually, on different rare and threatened fish species, migratory fish species. And I deal with a lot of dams, because dams tend to block fish from migrating from the ocean up to freshwater rivers, or from rivers back to the ocean. And in this case, we have a dam here on the Oyster River, and there's a debate about whether to remove it or repair it. And I can totally understand the people who want to repair it, because they might live on the pond and they might like the kayak or canoe, and some people just like the way it looks. But I'm a fish person, and so I see the other side of it. And dams, I think what people maybe don't realize is that we started damming rivers all the way back in the 1600s, and we broke that connection between the rivers and the ocean. And what we're missing out on is just an incredible amount of productivity in terms of just millions of fish moving from the oceans into the rivers and back. And that was just an amazing source of food for all kinds of different predators. And it was really the building blocks of the freshwater ecosystem here. Just depended on those nutrients and energy from the ocean coming up every year. And we've cut that off starting all the way back in the 1600s. We first started building sawmills and grist mills, and then it became textile mills, and now a lot of them are for electricity. And so whenever we can, if the dam's no longer being used for anything, we like to try to restore that connection and give those fish the best chance of reaching the habitat they need to lay their eggs, spawn, and reproduce, and then go back to the ocean. And so in this case, what we're talking about mostly is river herring and sea lamprey and American eels. And the river herring, they're about 8 to 10 inches long, and when they're about 4 or 5 years old, they swim up the rivers in the spring, they lay their eggs, and then hundreds of thousands and millions of fish, actually, depending on how big the river is, will be born in the river where they're only this big. They live through the summer, and then they swim back to the ocean where they live for 4 or 5 years and complete their life cycle. And here, there's a fish ladder, but really there's nothing better for restoring a river than removing the dam, because when you remove the dam, the fish don't have to find the entrance to the ladder, and once they spawn, they're in the river habitat. But what happens in a pond like this, when you have a dam on it, is it slows the river down, it warms up the water, and what happens is when you have a lot of nutrients and stuff washing into the water from lawn fertilizers, septic systems, running off of roads, you get a lot of algae. The algae die, and then microorganisms eat the algae, and they use up oxygen in the process. And that causes the oxygen to get depleted in the pond, which makes it not the best place for fish. So by removing the dam, you allow the fish to move up the river without any kind of obstacle and complete their life cycle.
Good morning. My name is Mike Shidlovsky. I'm a Durham resident. I live here on my home is just up on the little hill here, and we overlook what's behind me, which is the water that's being held back by the dam down in Durham, which creates the mill pond. And that dam, it's literally from here to the dam is over a mile. So this body of water is at least a mile long, going into Durham. So this water was this impoundment, as I call it, or something. The dam retains the water behind it, so it impounds the water behind it, and it creates this body of water. And that dam was built. It was started. The original dam was, I believe, it was about 400 years ago. And it was put there. Originally, it was a wooden dam, and then over the years, it was made better using concrete, etc. And it was put there in order to harvest water power. And there were mills there, and there were all types of machine shops and things that were run by the mill that was powered by the water that was coming over the dam. So just think about it, 400 years ago, we did this, and we started holding back this water and creating this impoundment, which essentially has turned into its own ecosystem over time. And when I say ecosystem, I'm talking about all the different aspects of an environment. An ecosystem is everything ranging from the flora, which is the trees and bushes and weeds and whatever, and the fauna, which is the actual animals that live in the water or depend on it to survive. They've become dependent upon it. So 400 years ago, we decided to start holding this water back. We created this impounded water over time, different creatures have moved in into this pond and have grown. We have everything ranging from river otters to very large snapping turtles that I've researched and are anywhere from 50 to 75 years old. We have muskrats, we have bullfrogs, we have all different types of fish, perch. I've heard that there is trout in here, but I've never seen one. And there are also fish that come up the dam. When the dam was rebuilt about 30 years ago, they put a ladder there allowing fish to come from the salt water below the dam up that ladder into this freshwater body, because there are fish that do that as part of their life cycle. So above the water, there are also a lot of creatures that are dependent on this body of water. There are great blue herons that come in every spring because of the fact that these fish come up into this body that I talked about earlier, and they eat those fish, and they build their nests in these very large bull pines that are surrounding the pond. And so there's a creature that has actually made this their baby raising area every spring. Aside from that, there are ospreys. There are I have had a bear and a moose right here below our home, standing here. The other aspect of the value, or the why this body of water is important to the local area and to the community, etc., is because there's a lot of recreation that can happen here. And when I talk about recreation, I'm talking about things like canoeing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. When it freezes over like this, there is a lot of people that come and ice skate up and down the river. They build hockey rinks, etc. So those are all valuable things that people enjoy. They come down here. I will often get into the canoe after dinner in the summer when it's still light out, and just go for a beautiful, serene ride down the river to see what's going on. Often there's not a lot going on, but that's part of the beauty of it. It's very quiet and still, and very enjoyable to float up and down the river, paddle around, get some exercise, and be out in the fresh air.
So if the dam gets taken down, then what will happen? And how do you feel about, what's your position on that?
Right. So my position, first of all, if the dam was removed, you would not see what you see behind me here. There would be no water here. This would literally be a gully. And over time, what would happen once the water's drained is, of course, all the animals, the fauna, and all the flora in here. They're beautiful lily pads, etc., that bloom in the summer. That will all be gone, and it will be replaced by nature, which will take it over with different bushes and different growth, and what they call invasive species that invade areas that are available to them, and they thrive in those areas. And we do have a problem in this area with what's called buckthorn, and you can look up buckthorn as a plant and understand that it's an invasive species, and how it can really be detrimental or bad for the environment. So if this was drained, what will happen to all those animals living and creatures living under this ice and in the water? Of course, it'll impact, obviously, the great blue herons that we talked about earlier will no longer return here because there will be nothing for them to eat. The fish will be gone. There will be a real this will be essentially become a not only useless from the perspective that there's no longer anything here to take advantage of, but it'll also become an eyesore. It won't look nice. And and if we want to try to keep it looking nice, we would have to spend a lot of money every year just fighting the invasive species that are going to move, those plants I talked about that are going to move in here and take over. So again, you remove the dam, this will all be drained, it will be filled in with just a yucky mess. The creatures will leave. Not sure quite where they're going to go, or they're just going to have to die in place. And then we'll lose the recreation value of the pond, and we won't be able to, canoe, fish, ice skate, do all the great things we do on this body of water anymore. So that will be very sad as far as I'm concerned. If we do that, and I personally, my position is that it's the wrong thing to do to remove the dam. We should leave the dam where it is and let it degrade over time. It doesn't create any kind of, there's no danger to anybody by the dam being there. And over time, if the dam falls apart, then like they say, let nature take its course.
Hi, I'm Sean Moriarty. I'm a Durham resident and Oyster River grad. I'm a professional wetland scientist and wildlife biologist, and I grew up in Durham skating on this pond. I had a lot of great memories here. It's really been a great resource, but the problem right now that we have is behind us. This pond is it's a body of water that fish unfortunately can't reproduce in, based on the low oxygen levels, because we have a dam that is stopping the flow from going downstream. And we've had a lot of buildup of vegetation over the years and sediment. So what we have right here is part of the Oyster River that's just not conducive to a healthy estuary. So the proposal to remove the dam actually would relieve a lot of the stress that the low oxygen levels are having on the species and allow the river to get back to its normal state, which would be a free-flowing river out to Great Bay and the Piscataqua River, and continue to support the species that inhabit this estuary. So that's why I'm in favor for dam removal, and also considering sea level rises. We have a dam that's blocking high tides from coming upstream and being absorbed by the river that's behind us right now, which is now a pond. However, you get rid of the dam and the river can do what it's naturally supposed to be able to do, as opposed to leaving properties downstream subject to being flooded. So this is really a great opportunity for the town of Durham to act on behalf of the greater surrounding estuary and watershed and remove a structure that's impeding water flow and fish movement from going both upstream and downstream. So that's why I'm for dam removal, and thank you very much.
We're Katie and Doug Wheeler. We have lived in our house in Durham on Mill Road, not Mill Pond Road, but Mill Road, since 1967, right before our first daughter was born. And the Mill Pond was a destination for us, a tranquil place that we wanted to come to. I'd push the baby buggy. But I think before I go into all my recollections of how it was then and how I want it to be in the future, Doug, as a historian from UNH, has some important background.
As a historian, and I taught for many years at UNH, when I was going over the history of the mill pond and the dam, I was struck by how many key institutions and places are part of this history. First, there were several grist and wood mills there beginning in the 17th century, and they went on for quite a while. And when Hamilton Smith's family settled in Durham in the 1890s, eventually his daughter-in-law, Edith Onderdonk, gave the money to help build and keep the dam intact. And this was beginning with the university involvement when the last wooden dam collapsed, went away, was washed away. With the UNH engineering professor and with the contractor Chesley, who was the cement person, they built the dam in 1913. And so you have already in that period from the 1660s to 1913, when this dam, the basic part of it, was built, you've got the town involved, one of the more prominent families involved, and they owned the Red Tower. You had the University Engineering Department before UNH was the State University in 1923. They helped build this dam. So Mr. Chesley, whose name is on Chesley Drive, did the cement, and Professor Hewitt did the engineering. And so we have Hewitt Hall today, and we have Chesley Drive, and there is that history. And I think it's an important resource to keep our history in mind and to keep it alive. So I strongly support keeping the dam.
I agree, and I also want to see the mill pond restored so that we dredge it and make it welcoming to waterfowl again. There's something very relaxing about being near a body of water. It's almost a spiritual feeling that I've always wanted to live near water. Mill Road is close enough that I can walk to the mill pond, and did it routinely with our children, with our visitors, with friends. People would come here and just to sit and look. And people would bring bread for the swans. The first swan appeared probably in 1965 or 66, because I remember when it happened, I think she was named Alice Onderdonk. And then when we finally got another swan, that swan came on her own. But then we got Hamilton for Hamilton Smith. They produced cygnets, and those grew up, and we had swans, we had ducks, we had life in the pond. We had fish. It was very wonderful to be here and to know that it was part of our small town. Very quiet, it was just restful. There's something about looking at water that just makes you feel good, I think. So I think what we ought to be concentrating on is how do we restore the mill pond, not how do we get rid of it. I can't even imagine getting rid of it. It's an integral part of Durham and of this community, and it has brought the community together for many, many decades.
Hi, I'm Erin Hardy-Hale. I live on Mill Road, right on the Oyster River. I have a daughter, Zadie, who is in 5th grade, and my son, Boaz, is 7, and he is in 1st grade at Mastway. So I really understand that the issue of whether or not to take out the dam here in Durham, the Mill Pond Dam, is a really difficult choice here in our community. We have enjoyed living near the pond over the years. This winter we came and we ice skated a bunch. We have good friends who live a little further down on the pond, and I know they really value having this resource right in their backyard. So I understand that a lot of people feel a lot of attachment to the pond and to the dam, but at the same time, I also recognize that right now we have a chance to make a choice to prioritize the ecology and the natural world. And a lot of the times, the decisions that we make here in our town and in our lives are prioritizing human needs over the needs of nature and animals and plants. And right now, the pond is, even though we have some ducks here and I see some geese, the pond is not really very healthy right now. But if we were to remove the dam, it would mean that the river, the Oyster River, could flow more freely, and that in time, that would actually create a much healthier, more diverse, richer habitat for animals and plants. And in time, I think that we would all be able to enjoy the river and the landscape around this restored habitat as well. We live right on the Oyster River, and it's a wonderful place. And if we were able to restore this pond to a naturally flowing river, I think that everybody in the community would be able to enjoy it just in a different way.
I'm Daniel Day. I'm a longtime Durham resident. I've lived in this town since I was very little. Went to the Oyster River schools, K through 12. Stayed in town to go to the university, and now I still live in this town. I've left a couple times temporarily, but I've always made my way back. So I consider myself a lifelong Durham resident. And this pond behind me is the Mill Pond, and this is the heart and soul of Durham. Durham doesn't have too many freshwater bodies, at least in the center part of town. So this is really our watering hole. It's very peaceful down here. I live far away in the northern part of town, but I always like taking long walks down here or taking my car down here. Kids back there are doing on the point. And just take a break from busy life. And then you can walk down around the corner and see the Mill Pond Dam. And that is literally a trip back in time. This pond has been dammed up for over 400 years. That's a very long time. Long before the university was here. People often say that without the university, we wouldn't have a town. A lot of people think this town was built around the university, but the dam back there is proof that that is not true. This dam is iconic of the town of Durham.
I'm Kevin Sullivan. I work for the Hampshire Fish Game Department, and I oversee our anadromous fishery. Means fish that come back from the ocean every year, use this fish ladder that we're at, try to get up into the mill pond to lay their eggs every spring. Like I said, each spring we come to this fish ladder, which we operate for about 6 to 8 weeks every year. The purpose of that is to try to get anadromous fish coming back from the ocean into the mill pond to spawn. And while that does work and get some fish over there, I think the opportunity to remove the Mill Pond Dam to give fish free-flowing access to the freshwater habitat above is a really important opportunity to seize upon. It took millions of years for these fish and ecosystem to evolve to make this life cycle work, and it took us the blink of an eye to block it with a dam, and now we have the opportunity to try to reverse that role and return this back to a natural environment. The other thing it does for fish downstream that don't need to get above the dam is the dam's presence is nutrient loading in the impoundment and depriving the river below of nutrients. So if we can have a free-flowing system where nutrients are constantly flowing from the upper freshwater areas to the saltwater environment instead of in pulses, that'll be better for all of the bay's inhabitants down below.
My name is Pele Harrison, and I live here on the Oyster River. I grew up here. I was born and raised in Durham and grew up on the river, on Oyster River Road, and I really, really care about the Oyster River and the recreation that it provides for us, and the backwater of Hamel Brook and the Mill Pond. And I am in support of saving or preserving the Mill Pond Dam because I feel that it is a significant part of our town. It provides the beautiful pond, but also all this water back here, the Oyster River, the Hamel Brook, where it meets, and the recreation that it allows is so important to our community, the faculty neighborhood. Kids come down and canoe and fish and kayak, and we ice skate and cross-country ski, and it's a really important part of our community that so many people enjoy walking along the trails across the river. Another aspect to saving the dams or stabilizing the dam, preserving it, is that if it's removed, we'll never be able to get that back. We'll never be able to have a mill pond or have this waterway that is connected all the way up to Route 108 and connects all the way up past our new Kenny Rotner Bridge. And it will be gone, and there's nothing else. There's no way to save it after that or replace it. And we will just have a tiny little stream of water back here, and the pond won't be a usable space for our community anymore.
Hi, I'm Scott Calitri, and I'm a resident of Durham, and I'm fairly passionate about removing the Oyster River Dam, the Mill Pond Dam on the Oyster River, and trying to restore the Oyster River to a more original state. Although we can never go back to the way it was before we were here, a more original state is better for the wildlife, the fish, the birds, the invertebrates, and otherwise. The Oyster River is tremendously important for the herring, which is a small fish, particularly the blueback herring, which is one type of herring. And the Oyster River traditionally was the strongest river for the blueback herring in New Hampshire. So you think of the entire Northeast, you think of New Hampshire, and then the Little Oyster River has been the stronghold of these blueback herring. So if you think back to when your parents were kids, you can't remember, but they'll remember, the river had a much more healthy run of blueback herring. The herring came into the river to spawn, made lots of small herring, and that's what perpetuated the run here in the Oyster River. So the herring run has dwindled quite a bit to where we are today, and it's in extreme trouble. So if you think about when your parents were kids, the number of herring there were, put your hands out like this, so you have 10 fingers. Now have 9 of your friends stand next to you. So we have 100 fingers. Everybody's got 10 fingers. And that's a good representation of how the herring were when your parents were kids. Now tell 9 of your friends to sit down, put one hand behind your back, and hide 2 of your fingers. So now we have 3 left. And that's about what the herring are now. They've gone from about 152 or 192,000 in 1992 to under 5,000 last year. And this is something that we're not exactly sure what causes it all. But as the impoundment, the pond behind me, has matured, we have less dissolved oxygen, which helps the fish and other organisms. We have more elements in the pond that have come through all the tributaries and the stream and settled down. And as you see, the weeds in the pond have started to take over. And because of these reasons, and also some other reasons we're not so sure about, items like the blueback herring have dwindled. A lot of people in town are worried about the historical significance of the pond. The pond and the dam, in one shape or another, have been here for about 400 years. This current dam for about 100 years. So there's a strong argument for historically this pond has been there. But what's important to remember also is that history didn't start 400 years ago. Our indigenous groups, our Native American groups, were fishing on the banks of the Oyster River over 10,000 years ago, and that was without a dam, and things were more healthy. And even before people were here, for millions of years, organisms like the blueback herring were using the Oyster River and the tidal area behind us for spawning and for growing. So when you think about historical significance, we have to think past when the European settlers came to the United States and really think back when our native peoples and before humans were even here. And the wildlife that relies on the herring includes whales out in the ocean, seals, dolphins, porpoises, the striped bass, the cod and haddock you might eat for dinner, and then the birds, the osprey, the eagles, and many other diving birds that eat these and rely on the herring as a primary source of food and nourishment.